All right, we're going to jump into our next question, and it reads, considering the answer that Dr. Holland gave about the soul, how should I understand 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, where it says, therefore, we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we live by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So I'm assuming she's referencing to an answer you've given previously.
Correct. And for those that are wanting to remember, I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure they can go and see the previous episode at the Hope channel. But what we basically began with was the reality that the Bible clearly articulates that we don't have a soul, but we are a soul. The union of the earth, the ground, and the breath of God, and man became a living being or a living soul. And so that's the context of this question. And again, I think context is the absolute key. Dr. Wallin and I were talking about this and that context of the first few verses of 2 Corinthians 5.
Yes, because if we start with actually verse 1, for we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, so we need to think, what is this tent he's talking about, this house? We have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed with our habitation, which is from heaven, if indeed, having been clothed, we shall not be found naked. Verse 4, for we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, not because we want to be unclothed, but further clothed, that mortality may be swallowed up by life. So Paul here is talking about, as he also talks about elsewhere, as between the contrast between our mortal bodies and the immortal bodies that we will be clothed with when Jesus comes. We can look at that also in 1 Corinthians 15. But here he talks about the house or building, this tent, this earthly tent, that's our earthly body. And we look forward to the time to be clothed with the house or our habitation from heaven. And interestingly, he says that we shall not be found naked. In other words, there's no intermediate state between being clothed with our earthly house right now and being clothed with our heavenly body when Jesus comes. It's not like when we die, we go somewhere like to heaven or to hell. The Bible doesn't teach that. Instead, what it teaches is that we will, when we're in the grave, we are sleeping. As I mentioned before, we could look at some of those passages if we have time. But that would be, the naked state. We don't want to stay there. We want Jesus to come and to be clothed with immortality. 1 Corinthians 15. This mortal must put on immortality. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 51 to 53.
I do think that this verse has layers upon layers of things that we can study. But I do think that, as you both mentioned, it's important to read the entire chapter and get it in context to better understand what this is trying to tell us.
So just to follow on, so when we're absent from the body, it doesn't mean we're naked. It means that we're clothed then with a heavenly body and we are with the Lord when He comes.